Well, dang. I'm suddenly glad that I re-uploaded that modified version of the May newsletter because just a couple days later, bam, we have a brand new Summer 2024 newsletter. Now, before I go through this, I did post a tweet making some predictions prior to the newsletter's release. One of them was kind of obvious summer-themed sprites, and boom, we got that. As for the rest, well, I wasn't entirely on the mark, but let's go through it. Now, first of all, this Toriel in a sun hat, sundress, and glasses is precious, and I love the annoying dog just poking his head out of the basket. Extremely cute stuff. The newsletter sprites are always just so charming in the kind of vibes and little mini-stories they tell, and this is no exception. Now, on to the main focus of the newsletter. Deltarune Chapter 4, making progress. Awesome. And by the sounds of it, quite a lot is done. And so, when I first read through this, I thought, so are we going to get a release date? Because it seemed like this was shaping up to be like, okay, cool, we're almost in the clear, just need a couple more months to go. And I love this comment right here, that all the chairs should have names because of Chariel. I wonder if that's a hint that we'll be actually seeing a Chariel Darkener. I feel like that's probably going to happen, because imagine a lot of the important objects in the Dreamer house are going to manifest in some way or form, whether it's as a person or as a set piece. And it'll be really interesting to see more of that, because we've only really seen the green room and a couple other little teases here and there. It's interesting to hear, too, that these chapters might surpass Chapter 2 in length, because when I first played Chapter 2, I remember it took me like 6 hours to go through the first time. So I can see why this is going to be a paid release even without Chapter 5, because that's a lot of material. There are indie games that you pay for on Steam that are shorter than Deltarune Chapter 1 and 2 combined. Heck, even Undertale, I think, if you're not speedrunning it, is a shorter experience than 1 and 2 put together. And they're already working on Chapter 5, so that's also really awesome. Hitting a bunch of the pre-production process, like maps and bullet patterns and stuff, with these adorable Sans and Papyrus swimwear sprites. I love Sans' stupid snorkel and flippers. Like, you'd think they're skeletons, they don't really need it. And then Papyrus, he just has a swim cap and goggles, and honestly, more power to him. He's already rocking a great fit. Oh gosh, and these sprites are freaking cute. I love how Chris and Susie are just gnawing. They're so eager. Birdly just vibing in his cute little shorts. They're all just roasting birdseed. Noelle is such a mood right there. Great expressive sprites. And then here's the big news drop here. We're not actually getting them as soon as a lot of people would hoped. I know there was a lot of hype and speculation. Hey, maybe we'll get them this fall. And I'm not going to say that's impossible, but just based on this alone, I'm already getting the impression it's more likely it's going to be sometime in 2025. Great Alfie sprite here too. Athletic fit. Super cute. Love the little Metaton bullet above her. Always great to see Alfies, and I wonder if she goes jogging with Papyrus in this outfit. That would be great. And real quick, before I jump into what's left before release, I just want to appreciate this really cute sprite of Susie and Chris toasting on Ralsei's hat. But what's interesting is that just like with the previous newsletter, we're seeing Hat Ralsei again. And when I updated the mini newsletter video, I made a comment about how it's entirely possible that Ralsei, for whatever reason, is going to put the hat back on. Maybe he gets shy around Toriel and Asgore, maybe he gets insecure in terms of seeing them and realizing that they look so much like him, but they're Lightners and he's a Darkener, and what does this mean? In Chapter 2, he talks about not really knowing what it means to be Ralsei-like, so this could kind of hit some kind of existential crisis for him, which would be interesting. We'll have to see how it develops. But yeah, I think this right here, about game development and the fact that this is going to cost money, it makes perfect sense that this isn't something that he can just drop like he did with Chapter 2 and refuse to elaborate. Because when you're making a game for paid release, you have so many steps you gotta go through, and I'll open the other tab in a sec so that we can kind of go through that together. And I do appreciate that he made this like a separate page for the curious. And this art is just extremely charming. Pretty sure it's Kemi art. It has that vibe. Maybe I'm mistaken. but I love them both holding up Chris and looking so excited, and Chris is just vibing. Hey guys, I hope you're liking the video. Before we go into the full development update, I'd just like to plug my recent Hidden Leitmotifs video, as YouTube hasn't been notifying my audience very much and views are unfortunately down. It's 50 minutes of me going into some niche or subtle uses of leitmotif in Undertale and Deltarune, the Persona series, the Mario RPGs with a special focus on Paper Mario, and some cool standout examples from Pokemon. I'll put a link in the description as well as in the end screen. With that said, let's continue with the rest of your regularly scheduled newsletter. So, the quests to release Chapter 1, with this precious annoying dog on a hamster wheel, and that is most definitely Temmie art. It's much more recognizable with the way the dog is drawn. But yeah, this Game Maker function, and the reason why this newsletter was delayed for so long, is the Game Maker long-term solution or long-term source. I forget which it is, but gosh, I feel kind of bad for the Game Maker devs too, because they were basically getting hounded a lot just for the sake of the Undertale and Deltarune newsletter. And I understand the enthusiasm, I was excited too, but I think it's really important to be able to kind of scale it back and remember that these things do take time. They want to make the functionality as good as they can for people like Toby to make the most out of the tools. And I think sometimes the hype cycle with the Deltarune chapters and newsletters and stuff can get a little out of hand, so always good to be mindful of that. Anyway, it's really interesting that basically he's kind of going towards each chapter technically being its own game, but with the way he describes it, I think it makes a lot of sense that he would want kind of this internal game separation, because when you alter code within a game, really strange bugs can pop up. Like, even when working on the playable Inverted Fate battles, we've encountered some really odd things when we update code in the past. And so, code is really fragile. One change in a line in one place can accidentally have consequences in another line. So, and that's interesting too that this would make loading the game faster rather than taking longer, but I think it makes sense because then it would probably load each chapter as its own instance one at a time. But I think that's where the testing is going to happen, and I imagine Shay is going to be all over this, because he knows those games inside and out, and they are very good at finding bugs. I believe they actually identified some of the bugs in the earlier builds of Deltarune Chapter 2. I remember watching some of their streams when that happened, and it was a good time, and I think even GDQ caused some bugs to be kind of made official, like the speedrunner satiated variable when you run by and the little swatchlings go whoop and fly into the air when you interact with the platters on wheels, I think. It's been a hot minute. Oh gosh. Another great piece of art with Queen here, just being her wacky self. I believe that's the Punch-Out style arcade machine from Chapter 2. But yeah, I think taking into consideration, he's going to want this on as many consoles as he can have, as well as PC. So that's Switch, Switch 2 if that's out by then. You got your PS4, PS5, Xbox. So there's a lot of considerations. Again, totally get the enthusiasm. It's a bit of a bummer, but I sympathize and understand because he wants this to be as great as it can be. And what I love about this picture of Ralsei with Japanese text versus English, and the way he has more sparkly looking eyes, is it reminds me a lot of the design changes that would go into characters like Ratchet and Clank or Crash Bandicoot in Japan. I'll probably put some example images along the side of the screen in editing, so stay tuned for that. And there's some really cool stuff coming up after he kind of goes over the whole process, and it's great that now that he knows Japanese better, he can be even more hands-on than he was before. And if you look at the Legends of Localization book, he was already extremely hands-on, giving very specific instructions. And of course, we're going to get more rules card, which I feel like he's going to have a gag in every single chapter. That feels pretty consistent. But we see some teases here. It seems like we're seeing a little bit of hinting at one of the weather enemies, and that's really cool. I suspect they're kind of going to be the mini-boss, like how you had Sweet Cap'n Cakes in Chapter 2, and you had K-Round in Chapter 1, so they're probably going to fill that similar kind of niche. And then we get a little dialogue. another fight. So I wonder if this is, like, coming off the back of a series of boss fights or mini-boss fights or something like that, or if... Oh, but then there's rules, so that makes sense. Maybe rules kind of crashes the party at some point. And gosh, frickin' Bambito trying to butcher more language. Last time it was frickin' pirate talk. And he's allegedly here for snacks. We'll see if it stays that way. Ooh, and Lancer, too. I wonder if he's saying this in the inventory or if he comes out again. Because this could actually be in Castletown. That's another possibility. And it really depends, because I feel like after what happened to Lancer in Chapter 2, they'd want to be a little more careful. We're getting a little bit of info on equipment here. A ginger guard. I wonder if it's like a ginger snack that got baked, but then in the Dreamer House world, it becomes like actual armor. And freaking Susie punching someone is fantastic. Or it could be the ginger guard is an enemy, too. Like... But Bangle suggests armor. We get a little bit of check text for the shadow guys, which is pretty cool. There really is so much charm in this art. Go get the Vero Vero-kun, Susie. Live the dream. I wonder, though, when it comes to the bug hunting, if they're gonna leave anything that might be useful to speedrunners but isn't too intrusive in normal play. And I guess it really depends on how serious about the bug hunting they are, because the thing with Chapter 2 is, since it was a free release, the standards are a little different. But then with a paid release, especially since this is coming after Undertale, the standards might be a little bit different. So, time will tell. I think it's possible that they may leave some Easter eggs and secrets, because Toby really does admire the speedrunning community. So yeah, ratings will be really interesting too. I can easily see Deltarune having an E10 or a T rating, because there's already mild language, some pretty dark stuff, especially in Chapter 2's Weird Route. It's definitely not going to be E for everyone, and if it goes to full-on T, I think it would really depend on other plot elements, because like the Xbox version of Undertale was rated T because it had the slot machine, whereas the other versions were E10, and certain countries are really strict with representation of things like gambling, which is also why Pokemon stopped having game corners. And it's really nice that he made kind of a visual chart here to kind of wrap it all together. And that's it for here. Oh gosh, Undine with a Giant Fan is fantastic, and pun not intended, but kind of saw it coming. Anyway, I think it's cool that he took the time to give us such a thorough update, because a lot of these newsletters, there's been updates, but I think by far this is the most openly transparent. Kind of gives you a better idea of the game production pipeline, which I think for a lot of fans is helpful in terms of sort of understanding, not just in terms of professional game dev, but like why certain fan game projects like Undertale Yellow or TS Underswap have taken so long to get out there. Because when you're playing a game, you might not realize just how much goes into it. Anyway, as one final thing, he made another collaboration, and unlike the last one, I am not even gonna bother playing the background music for that, because the whole reason that the May video had to get unlisted and re-edited and stuff was because Content ID stuff and the rights holder to the song really did not want to let go of that copyright claim. So after the video had gotten 21,000 views, boom, suddenly they're like, no, we want your ad money. And when I'm low income like I am, where all I really have is Patreon and YouTube revenue, every little bit of money helps. And if you want to support what I do, I'll put a link up to my Patreon in the description, probably in the end screen. And I have a lot of cool stuff there. I always kind of plug it at the end of my videos. But back to this. I think it's really cool that Toby has all these great opportunities because of Undertale's success, that he can interact and connect with these big creators. I mean, he's got all these connections with Hololive, and while I don't know a ton about VTubers, I know Hololive is pretty big. But then he's met Sakurai. He's met so many great people, and his heroes, even. He's collabed with Soon, and I think that really emphasizes just how important it is to stick to your dreams and follow your goals. I'll go ahead and throw Dead Man's Chest in the description of this video so people who want to just pop right over to there after this can check it out. And also, one thing I really admire about these music videos and songs that Toby gets involved with is that there's usually a story behind them. Like Sky's Forever Blue or The Greatest Living Show, they work as fun little one-shots in the form of a music video. And really funny that they sent freaking Megalovania, one of his own songs, as like a reference. I'll really have to listen and see if any of that influence shines through to the song. And of course, to wrap it all up, we have Spamton over an Open Fire. And what a smooth rotation, too. I think a character like Spamton with such a long nose, doing that kind of turnaround certainly isn't easy. Because he's a character who's really designed to be seen on the side. So that's pretty much it for this newsletter. Before I wrap things up, I just want to say if you did miss my May Mini newsletter video, it has recently been put back up with some new sections, briefly talking about some of the potential connections between Ralsei and Flowers, as well as that odd question in the Papyrus Q&A about the circus. And so, with that said, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.